The following program may contain coarse language, violence, nudity, mature subject matter, or scenes which may not be suitable for all viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And good evening, one and all. Welcome back to the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern, right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and on Channel 54 on the X Zone TV channel on Simul TV. And for more information on Simul TV and how you can subscribe to the X Zone TV channel, visit www.simultv.com. X Zone Nation, what a show we have planned for you tonight. In the first hour, we're going to be speaking to Dr. Judith SHERVEN, and then we're going to be speaking to Dr. James SNIECHOWSKI. Hour number 2, John Horgan. Hour number 3, Dr. Craig Hogan. And hour number 4, Ralph Ellis. That's all tonight here in the X Zone. Our first guest tonight, as I said, for the first segment is Dr. Judith SHERVEN. And Judith, welcome back to the X Zone. Great seeing you.
Great to see you, Rob, and it's a pleasure to be back.
Thank you. Judith, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and how you got to doing what you're doing?
All right, let me start with that. When I was young, I was a model and actress, and somewhere along the line, somewhere in my mid-20s, I realized, wow, I was really tired of selling what I looked like and needed to change my perspective, and went to graduate school in psychology and earned my PhD and became a clinical psychologist. So how I looked at it was I had first sold what I looked like. Now I could sell my brains and what I knew. Wow. Exactly. So that led to a private practice that was very fulfilling. And when I met Jim, who you're going to be talking with in a bit, we started doing workshops together. We started doing therapy with couples and singles, doing relationship work. And some of those people then asked us, can you do for my company what you're doing for us? And we would, and we didn't know what to charge. It was so much more fun than doing therapy with couples who, sometimes the couples didn't want to do the work. Sometimes we would have to say to a couple, guys, you really should get divorced. You're not willing to do the work. And working corporately, that was a lot more fulfilling. And so that led to executive coaching, which Jim and I do as a pair, which is unusual. And so we really enjoy helping people who are leaders in companies become more confident. Overcoming the fear of being fabulous has been a theme throughout a lot of this. And so today, we're both writers. We both are writing books and doing coaching.
Fantastic. Why is it you think that so many couples think that they really don't have to work at making their marriage or their relationship a success?
Well, I think that the whole idea of romance and like romance novels give the impression that when you meet the one, it'll just be magical and you'll just fall in love and everything will be taken care of because you're soulmates. And we don't get any preparation in school for things like money. We should be teaching kids about money. We should be teaching kids about professional work, why they're in school, and relationships. But
I think we should be teaching a lot more to kids than we are today. And I think that in the educational system, one major thing that has gone out the window is respect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, when I went to school, all the boys had to wear a white shirt, a tie, gray flannels, and black shoes. Everyone. There was no peer pressure. The girls had to wear a similar. And this way here, like I said, no one was better than anyone in school. We were all on the same level. And you called your teacher Mr., Sir. Your a lady teacher would be Mrs. So-and-so or yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. But today, oh my gosh, I see my grandchildren going to school and I say, where are you going, to a party? No, Dad, Grandpa, we're going to school. How the times have changed.
Right. They look like they're going to the beach.
Exactly.
You know, exactly. And my brother was a school teacher and then a school principal. And this is fairly recently, a few years back, but he was standing out on the playground and a young, probably 15-year-old student came up and kneed him from behind.
Ooh.
He's the principal of the school. Kneed him. He fell down, and actually it was a hill, and he rolled down the hill. When he had the young man and his father in his office, the father defended the kid.
You've got to be kidding.
No. So I'm just supporting what you're saying, which is this absence of respect.
Let me ask you this, Judith. How did you first become aware of the power of trusting your own internal focus of control to navigate reality?
It's a wonderful question. I thank you so much. A very pivotal event happened for me when I was 12. I looked 18. I had just sprouted. I was as tall as as my age now, I've lost a bit of height. But back then, I looked 18. I had a full body of a woman and so forth. And I started modeling at a beach club in Santa Monica. And in the dining room, that was perfectly fine. Couples, families, lovely. And then the first night that I did this, I went into the bar. We all had to go into the bar. And it was all men. And I realized they think I'm 18. They are going to think I'm 18 and legal to hit on. It's up to me to take care of this and make sure that they cannot talk to me. They cannot have a conversation with me. So I did my little pirouettes. I made my turns. I smiled. I thanked them for their attention if they said something nice. And I kept going. And that moment stayed with me the rest of my life, that I was in charge of how other people were going to treat me. And it wasn't a matter of me trusting other people. It was a matter of me trusting me.
The topic of today's discussion is the fear of being fabulous. How can anyone fear being fabulous? And where did you come up with that concept?
Well, when I was in private practice, I started noticing how many of my clients were reluctant to go after a larger life, whether it meant in their career, in their dating life, in their physical fitness. And I started labeling it the fear of being fabulous. And what Jim and I see even in our clients, these are VPs, senior directors, people, at the heads of their companies, is this reluctance to be fully all that they can be for so many reasons. And lots of it, back to family background, is so often people have been raised and been told things like, don't get a big head. Who do you think you are? Nobody wants to hear from you. And it goes in, and then they carry it into adulthood, and it holds them back.
So basically, by telling children the negative aspects of, what you were just saying, we're programming them to fail.
Well, and not necessarily fail. An example is, Jim and I wrote a book called What Really Killed Whitney Houston. And when Whitney Houston died in her late 40s, she was young.
That was a great loss.
She'd been this superstar. When we did the research on her life, she had never been allowed to leave home. Her parents clung to her. she was not able to truly embrace being a superstar.
Right.
And so she suffered from the fear of being fabulous in so many ways that in her 40s, she started behaving like her mother. She started smoking cigarettes like the mother. She put on weight like the mother. And no surprise, she ended up doing, drugs and so forth and taking herself out of this life. Sadly for all of us. But it really was the fear of being fabulous.
In today's world, kids have a lot more than you and I ever had when we were children. They have more liberties. They have more rights. They control in many homes, and I've seen this. I'm not saying this is the way it was with our children in our home, especially when I was a child, that they rule the roost. The parents are too busy with 2 jobs or whatever. Here's your iPad. Here's your iPhone. Take care of yourself. We're busy. How is this going to affect society in the future?
Well, that's a really good question, because they're not being encouraged and supported to really use their full gifts, their full intelligence. They're saying, essentially, you're on your own.
Yeah.
We hope you'll do well. But they're not getting parental support to really excel, to go after it and be whether it's at
All they can be.
all that they can be, exactly, whether it's academically or in sports or the arts. Exactly.
You and I have to take our first break. Judith, please stand by. Again, thank you for joining us. And Explanation, if you'd like to find out more about our guest this hour, visit their website, www.judithandjim.com and www.yourmiracle.net. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as the X Zone continues with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. And welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. My guest this hour is Judith SHERVEN, and we're talking about, the fear of being fabulous. Now, Judith, you didn't marry until you were 44 years old. How is that relevant to what we're talking about? Like, I know Jim's a great guy, but what took you so long?
I didn't meet the right man until I met Jim. And
patience is a virtue.
Patience is definitely a virtue. And I was very clear with myself that I wasn't just going to get married to get married,
right?
Which so many women do. I was fine. I had a profession. I was still single. I was definitely looking, but I was very clear that I needed somebody who was very intelligent and some very specific things in terms of a good sense of humor. He had to be a good dancer. And Jim met all those requirements. And Jim had 2 divorces behind him when I met him. So we were not perfect on paper, but we're now 35 years into this marriage and it gets better and better.
Well, congratulations on that. So should I call Jim Twinkle Toes?
I don't know. You might object.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. Congratulations, 35 years.
Thank you.
Tell me about the imposter syndrome.
I think what we're looking at here, and we can come back even to Whitney Houston and look at how so many people cannot own whatever they have achieved. And we see it in corporate America a great deal. People get promoted into being a vice president or, the CEO of a company. And secretly, they feel like an imposter. They aren't able to really own who they are. So when we wrote the book, What Really Killed Whitney Houston, we were wanting to expose how she could not own who she really was in terms of being a superstar. And one example, Rob, is when she would get an award, and you can see it on video, when you see her, she would run up to the stage, she'd grab her little trophy or whatever she was given, and then she would nervously sort of, and I'm doing this on purpose. Thank you, God. Thank you, Jesus Christ. Thank you, Mommy and Daddy. And she'd run off. She couldn't own that she was this award-winning singer and be able to thank everybody around the world who has loved my music. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you. She couldn't do it. So it was that kind of fear of being fabulous, in that she couldn't own being Whitney Houston.
So let me ask you, what kind of tip can you provide our audience that will help them to understand and to open up to any gifts that are sent to them by the universe?
Thank you, Rob. First of all, I would say to everybody listening, how well do you receive compliments? How well do you receive praise? Do you openly own it and say thank you? Or, like so many people, fluff it up. It's nothing. Oh, forget about it. And they're not able to own it. So I want to urge everybody listening to practice receiving praise, receiving compliments. And secondly, to practice asking for what you want, to ask for what you need and want, whether it's in your relationships or in the workplace, with friends. Most people have trouble just asking for whatever it is that they need or want, for fear that they'll be turned down or they'll be seen as needy.
But you know, rejection as well as failure is always the learning towards success. You cannot be successful unless you fail. That's a known fact, because failure is the way that you learn how to rectify the error you just had, so you can get on to the next part of your life and your learning and your success.
And Rob, I would encourage people to not even think of it as failure, but that it wasn't a good fit for them, whether they didn't get hired for the job, or so-and-so didn't ask them out for a second date, or whatever it might be, is rather than seeing it as rejection, to think about it as, that wasn't the right place for me. That wasn't the right job. It wasn't the right date. It wasn't correct for who I am. Because so many people feel like they were rejected when actually that's not true. It just wasn't the right fit.
So how does one go about finding the right fit?
What a great question. One thing that I would encourage everyone to think about is, where will they be well received? Whether it's dating or in terms of looking for the right career, who out there wants who they are? Too many people aspire to something that's not a really good fit. And then they end up either being employed in a company where they're not going to feel right. They're going to end up either having to leave or maybe even being let go. Or they marry some ideal fantasy idea of somebody they think they're supposed to be with. And of course it ends up in a divorce, because it's not going to work. It wasn't about reality. It was about a fantasy.
And I wonder how many of these people that are out there are actually the result of what their parents want them to become, or what their parents want them to do, or because their parents want them to fit into a certain aspect of society that the parents cannot get themselves into themselves.
Totally. Absolutely. So many times when we are coaching people, we will say, may we go fishing in your childhood? We've never had a single person say no. And when we say, please talk to us about how your parents talked to you about who you were supposed to be, whether it's about dating, whether it's about work, athletics, health, whatever it is, then we hear how the parents were putting pressure on them either to not excel or to go after something almost unrealistic, but that they were still bogged down in those parental injunctions instead of breaking free and overcoming the fear of being fabulous and being fabulous on their own terms.
I remember, once again, going back to my youth, when we would sit around at the supper table and discuss, have an open conversation about what we did during our day, what we were going to do tomorrow. And then the conversation was whatever you wanted to talk about. There was no peer pressure from our parents. They guided us and helped us to best be successful in the areas that we wanted to follow, and we've done the same thing with our kids. But also back then, teachers would also pick up clues on where you were best to head into your life and what you were best to do. If you were good in mathematics, or if you were good at art, if whatever the case, even out in the playground playing baseball, they helped. There wasn't this time restraint that there is with the kids today. And I think that one of the worst things that has happened with our youth of today is that there's not enough time for them.
Yeah. And them on their own terms.
Mm-hmm.
So many kids are taking 3 different kinds of classes after school because the parents think they need to.
Yep, exactly.
And that's really sad.
The time is coming very short when I have to say so long to you, and then I have the pleasure of talking to Jim. But I'd like to ask you 2 questions.
Sure.
What do you most enjoy about your life today? That's the first question.
I would say the being with Jim is certainly the most fun. Still today, we still flirt with each other. We still dance together. We still have a good time. We're still working together. We still coach together. And then after that, I would say that the next thing that I really enjoy is the coaching, is working with people who want to grow, who want to overcome the fear of being fabulous. And it's great fun to see people get stronger and bolder about their excellence.
And I've got about a minute left. This is my final question. What are your final thoughts for the members of the X-Zone Nation tonight?
Please, please be all that you can be. Take it on as a challenge for yourself. If you're holding back in any way, overcome the fear of being fabulous. Please, please, please.
Judith, as always, great pleasure talking to you. And X-Zone Nation, if you'd like to find out more about our guest this hour, Judith SHERVEN, please visit these 2 websites, judithandjim.com and You Are a miracle.net. Judith, on the other side of this break, Jim will be in the hot seat. Take care of yourself, and I look forward to the next time you and I meet here in the X-Zone.
Terrific, Rob. Same here. Thank you so much.
My friend. All right, X-Zone Nation, I'll be back on the other side of this brief break as the X-Zone continues with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario. Now, if you would like to listen to any of the past shows of any of the shows that we've produced and broadcast here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, including the TV shows on the X-Zone TV channel, all you need to do is go to one place, www.xzbn.net. Jim and I will be back on the other side of this break as we continue. So whatever you do, the old saying, don't go away. Welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone. I'm Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. Now, a number of you have written me emails asking, Rob, you're in Hamilton, you're in Crystal Beach, and now you're in St. Catharines. Where is St. Catharines? Well, St. Catharines, my friends, is on the shore of Lake Ontario. We're about 40 minutes south of Hamilton, about an hour and a half south of Toronto, and we're about 15 minutes away from Niagara Falls, Ontario, where we can cross into the United States. That's it, all in a nutshell. Funny part is that no matter where we've done the show from, we've always done it from somewhere in the Great Lakes Triangle. And it's funny that we're back in St. Catharines. It's because 30 some odd years ago, the X Zone's very first radio show was broadcast from 1220 CHSC, just down the street from where we are right now. I guess I've got the salmon complex returning, swimming upstream to my home. Exonation, my guest this hour is Dr. James SNIECHOWSKI, and he is Judith's husband. So let's bring him on. Hey, Jim, how are you tonight?
Hi, Rod. I'm smiling because of that Simul TV commercial you run. That's very, very cute.
Jim, nice seeing you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Always a great pleasure talking to you and Judith. You and I are going to be talking for the next about 20 to 30 minutes about the spiritual and psychic power of leaving home. But before we do that, let our listeners know a little bit about you and who you are.
Well, like Judith, I began my professional career as an actor. I was a stage actor. She did television commercial and television shows. I was in regional theater around the United States. Then I moved to LA because being in movies was the fundamental drive. I got to LA and found I did not like the business. The business, not anything I wanted. But basically, as a stage actor, I had the opportunity to create characters, to a lot of makeup, costume, etc. I could create characters and disappear myself into them. In Hollywood, at the very beginning, you are nothing more than a personality. That personality, that's what you're selling. And if that hits, like a John Wayne. He was always the exact same. There was no acting. There was just John Wayne reacting. Mm-hmm. I didn't like that. It was not. It was aesthetically unsatisfying, unfulfilling. So I decided then to go back to school. I didn't go back to school until I met Judith. I got my PhD in psych. It was a combination of philosophy and psych, and it was called human behavior. And then Judith and I started working together, like she told you. People said, "Can you do for us? Well, you do for a company. What you do for us?" Mm-hmm. The relationships are the same. It doesn't matter. It's with your manager or your wife or your husband. The interactions are the same. We said, "Sure, we can do that." From that time on, we had developed an international executive coaching career. That's
by the way, congratulations, 35 years of marriage.
Thank you very much. And I heard Judith say it gets better, actually. It does get better. And we do flirt these. It does.
It does, but as Judith and I were talking, you have to work at it. There's no magic solution. There's no magic pill. You have to work at it. Anything in life that is worth having, you have to work at.
I'd just like to say one thing about that. When people fall in love, most of the time, it seems somehow to just happen. And it's wonderful, even if it goes downhill. It's wonderful. They remember that part of it. They don't remember the going downhill part. There is an implication in that time that you don't have to do anything. It just happens. That's what happens in life. When the work is required, the response of, why do I have to work? It just happens. Well, it doesn't.
What does leaving home mean?
Thank you for that. Leaving home, when we were all born, we're born in a particular family culture. Mm-hmm. Emotionally, intellectually, religiously, socioeconomically, all of those areas have their own. They want you to be a certain way. Like, for example, I was raised a Polish peasant. I was raised by Polish peasants who came from the old country. I was raised in Polish peasant terrorizing Catholicism. I carried that with me for many, many years. That was the culture I was raised in. We can call that the home. It's the emotional atmosphere that we take in, and it becomes unconscious, we habituated, and it becomes the way we live our lives, well, without even knowing where it's coming from. To leave home is not just to move to another state, or for that matter, move to Mars, if that were possible. It's simply to leave behind that emotional atmosphere that we were brought up with, that has become unconscious, has become habituated, and therefore automatic. We don't even think, we don't reflect, we don't check on ourselves, we just behave. That's what I mean by, first of all, that's what I mean home. Leaving home is where the work comes in. Know thyself is a request goes back 2,500 years. Know thyself. Well, knowing thyself is not a walk in the park. You have to love, you have to not train, you have to learn how to self-observe. You have to learn how to self-reflect and what to do with all that that information when you discover it. When I discovered it was horror, terrorized Polish Catholic, medieval Catholicism. What do I do that? How do I take that and make it into something that is more aligned with me? That's what I mean by leaving home.
Okay, so why is it so emotional and spiritual environment of the birth home so sticky?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. One is,
okay,
when we're born, the simplest reason I have for you, when we're born into a family into which we must survive. That's not a conscious thought. I gotta survive here, but we have to survive in this family. The family has its mores, its rituals, its beliefs, and when I align with those beliefs, I get praised, I get smiled at. I become that. I become what, like you and Judith talked about. I become what they want. I become what they want, not maliciously, because I need them to keep me alive, to keep feeding, to keep loving me. And that gets really sticky. It goes very deep. It goes deep into the unconscious, and it's not easy to give up. If I were to say to you, Rob, that's an area of love I want you to give up. Are you crazy? Why would I want to give that up? Because it's a death trap. And it's spiritual because it goes beyond your day-to-day mores. It's existential. Like, for example, we in the United States now have Donald Trump, who have wrecked everything, not everything, damn near everything. That is something that is very disturbing to me, because I lived in that previous culture. But now I have to learn how to live in what's happening here, and I am. And it is really powerful, spiritually powerful. I don't mean religiously, I mean spiritually.
So the imprisonment that people have are because, why? Well,
because as I said before, when you receive the approval of your parents, the original home, it's fulfilling, and it's something we want and we need. When we get it, we take it in. If I am scowled at, I don't do that behavior anymore. Right. I do the behavior I know will get me loved, laughed with, enjoyed, praised, benefited. That it stays. Then we practice that over time. We don't consciously practice it because it's unconscious. It seems automatic. Like, this is just life this way. This is the way life is. I have to do this because this is life. It becomes habitual and automatic. I don't even know that I'm doing in a habituated way. That's why it's mostly why it's sticky.
But isn't it up to the parents to help the child wean off of this support, this imprisonment, and allow the child to, I'll use the analogy, spread their wings and fly?
Of course, how many parents do you know who done that? Who did that?
Well, my parents,
I heard that.
my aunts, my uncles, we've done it with our children.
You come from an extraordinary family. You have to know that.
Yes,
I agree with you. That they even thought to do that was extraordinary. Really, if you look at the general population, how many parents do that for their kids? The percentage is very low, very low. For the reason I'm talking, because they're doing that, they're just being who they want. They want to. They're being who someone wanted them to be. They learn how to do that. They learn the behavior, and they continue. Even when you go to corporation, we work as executive coaches. We work with employees for interns to the C-suite. CEO, COO, CTOs, etc.
Right.
These supposedly intelligent, educated men, usually, that's changing some, men who are in this position of power where they can't change. You would be surprised at how many of them feel anxious, they feel the imposter syndrome. I'm not real. The phrase is, if you ever really found out who I am, you would reject me.
Really. Jim, you and I have to take a short break. We'll be back. And Explanation, if you'd like to find out more information about our guest this hour, James, or as we call him, Twinkle Toes SNIECHOWSKI. That's a reference to your dancing ability, Jim. No harm meant there, my friend. Visit their websites, JamesSniechowski.com. That's JamesSniechowski.com and www.JUDITHandJim.com. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away. And welcome back. Jim SNIECHOWSKI is our special guest. And Jim, it's always a great pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, sir. And reciprocal.
People refer to Leaving Home to your Leaving Home trilogy as faction. What does that mean?
Faction is a new category, relatively new. I take the facts of my life. I don't report on them like a journalist. That would just be reporting on facts. One other concern with learning history. It's all about dates and not about the people, their motivations, their desire, their behaviors. Faction is taking the facts of one's life, my life, and using them in a story. The story has its own demands. I have to create fiction around those facts to make the story work. Therefore, it's now called faction.
You completed your Leaving Home trilogy with title When Angels Die.
Mm-hmm.
What is that metaphor for?
Well, angels are thought to be very high beings. I had in the last book, there are two deaths. One, when I was in my late 20s, I met a woman and I fell in love. And she died in an automobile accident. Mm-hmm. She hit a bridge, abutment, and died. She was an angel. I don't mean angel in this supernatural sense. She was an angel. She died. I died. There was a part of me that died. I lost. Mm-hmm. When I got to Hollywood, after years of wanting to be a movie actor, that died. Angels, that's what I mean by angels die.
How has it felt to you that your books have received so many awards?
It feels terrific. I have always known that I could write. Mm-hmm. What I wasn't sure of whether or not I could tell a good story. I can write a sentence, I can write a paragraph, I can write a page, but
Yeah.
can I write 200 pages? Will it keep you engaged? Will you want to know what's going to happen next? To me, that's the central quality of a good book. I want to know what's going to happen next. Motivates me to turn a page. I am thrilled with these reviews because I have wanted recognition. Where I came from in Detroit, recognition was far and few between. If there was any recognition, it was negative. It's what you're doing wrong. Here, I can say I have done this from my heart, from my soul, and people are moved by it, which is exactly what I want. I want them to be moved. I want them to see in the writing, not just the good writing. The books are really well written. I want them to see the depth of the story so they can find a place for their story in their own lives and how they live, and how they have and will continue to live.
So what are you working on now, Jim?
It fits right in with the Oracle of Vidor. I am working on a novel called Second Life. It is a reincarnational romance. They meet in 1505. They return to life in 2005. He's a priest in during the Papal Inquisition in southeastern France. She is a beautiful peasant girl. They had an affair and they are caught by the religious authorities. They re-meet in 2005. And in so doing, they have a sense there's something about the other one, something they can't quite figure it out, can't put their finger out, but they both know there's something here. The book is their exploration through the help of a world-class hypnotist who helps them go back to 1505 and find out what actually happened there. One of the keys to the book, the character in 1505, his name is Emile. The character in 2005, his name is Eric. And Emile and the woman in 1505, Justine, they have died and returned reincarnated. They have to find out how Emile and Justine died. It's pretty gruesome. The Papal Inquisition did not get around. They were
my final question for you tonight, Jim, is what would you most want people to take away from our conversation?
That leaving home is essential to your personal freedom. You cannot ever achieve personal freedom and the fulfillment that personal freedom brings unless you leave home. If you don't, as I said before, because it has become habituated, it seems natural. We just behave those behaviors without question. They will not change unless you change them. What I described in the 3 books is a story of leaving home. The first book is about what it was like for me in Detroit when I was 9. And then the second book when I was 13, and then member of a street gang in Detroit. And then I went on to be an actor. Well, what happened then? You have to leave home. Please consider what I'm saying. If you don't understand, go look at JUDITHandJim.com. Go look at SNIECHOWSKI.com. Read my books. You get a sense of what that's all about.
It's ironic that so many kids are moving back home these days. But that's a topic for another show. Jim, thank you so much for joining us tonight, my friend. Peace and love be with you both. And give my very best to Judith, and keep the great work up.
And blessings on your family and you and your kids.
Thank you so much, my friend. Good evening, Jim.
Good evening.
X-Zone Nation, 2 great people, Jim and Judith. Their websites are, just go to this main one. It has everything. JUDITHandJim.com. When I come back from this break that we take from now until the top of the hour, John Horrigan is going to be joining us joining us here in hour number 2. Hour number 3, we have Dr. Craig Hogan, and hour number 4, Ralph Ellis. It's a busy night here in the X Zone, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. This is a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And we come to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern, right here from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. I'll see you all at the top of the hour.